What's up, everybody? Thanks for watching Car Inside. It's a new week here on iRacing, and that means it's time for another qualifying breakdown. And this is the first time that, since doing the qualifying breakdowns, that we're going back to a track that I've already been to and done a breakdown. However, this time Texas Motor Speedway is going to be a lot different than officials were 3 months ago when we done our very first breakdown here on Car Inside. Back then, track temperature was a little cooler, it was under the lights, and it was at 8:30 at night. This time officials is going to be 1:30 in the day, and track temperature is going to be somewhere around 110 degrees, as the air temperature is the generic 78 degrees when it comes to these fixed officials. Our hot lap is a 30.408, and like always, we'll let you watch this thing through, and then we'll back up and break it down. But always picking up speed through 3 and 4 up top, getting up as much speed as we can. Out to the wall, lifting slightly about halfway, and back in it. The track is going to be very slick off the exit of 2. You want to keep the wheel as straight as you can, and going into 3 and 4 throughout the center. As you can see, I'm working the wheel here. The track is very slick. You want to get as close as you can to that white line, but not on top of the white line, or as the truck will try to step out. But what I do, it's on the first lap, it's throwaway lap. Kind of drive it in deep, just let it roll, just getting as much air into the tires, heat in the tires, sorry, as possible. Coming through 3 and 4, right up next to the wall. Build up as much speed as we can, flat footing it, try not to lift. We're going to come down here when we hit this first dog leg. We're not going to go back up, but just to this white line. We're going to pinch it as low as we can. What we're going to do is we're going to aim for this white line, then we're going to aim for the red mark out here on the wall. Here, to the wall, and when you get to this Texas Motor Speedway sign, there, that's where we're going to start to turn in. As you start to turn in, just after you start to turn in, you're going to look for this black seam. That's going to be your lift point. You're going to lift somewhere. A few months ago, we were lifting to about 80% throttle. Here today, we are going to be lifting about halfway, maybe 40% throttle, all the way down. And when you get to this next seam, we're going to flat foot it, stay in it, right to the bottom. And you're going to drive down and make sure you're on the white line as you approach this little strip of asphalt. That's kind of where you're going to go straight and start tapering back up, but you don't want to get too close to the wall. You want to be about a lane off the wall and just gradually work your way out there. Now, as soon as I get to the wall, don't overturn and drag speed, but start working your way down off the wall. You kind of enter in shallow here. You can actually, where you can flat foot Texas, and it's the way that turns 3 and 4 is, you can actually enter it a lot more shallow than most 1.5-mile tracks. So I'm already under this white seam as we go in, and kind of aiming toward this seam here to make a straight shot here as my points of contact. Get down to the bottom. Now, as you can see here, the wheel is, I am working the wheel. You don't want to be all the way to the white line. I almost messed my lap up there. All the way to the bottom, slightly coming up off about a half lane, not all the way to the wall, back down, pinching the lap, and just trying to get as much free lap time as we can, holding the bottom, just not enough to scrub speed. But that is a 30.408. This week at Texas is going to be very fun, being under the sun, having a little higher track temperature. I'll show some lap times here to you guys. Something that I kind of went into race pace and just ran a couple different laps to kind of show as reference points here. There's a couple different ways to approach this. Qualifying, when it comes to qualifying, as always, I use a 12-to-1 on these 1.5 miles. Front brake bias, I had it on 57. That's probably what I'll be running for the race. Brake bias doesn't make a difference when it comes to the qualifying, but for the race, I do use a little brake over the course of a longer run. So I will have that around 57, 58%. I may work it down closer to 55 as the run goes on. But for now, just for qualifying, it doesn't matter. For the race, I will be using a 16-to-1 steering ratio. But for race pace, turns 1 and 2 is the corners of the track that's really going to burn up that right front, and then 3 and 4 is really going to eat up the right rear. So the track runs really different. You guys that are coming from Kentucky just a few weeks ago, maybe haven't ran here at Texas. It's kind of like Kentucky, but it's reversed. As I was saying, at Kentucky, it's like Texas, but it's reversed. 1 and 2 is going to be the corner where you're off the throttle, managing that right front, getting down to the bottom, making sure you get a straight drive off. Then 3 and 4 is going to be the one where you're managing the throttle and not burning up the right rear. You don't want to just spin those tires all through the corner and burn it up, or you're not going to have any corner exit speed, and you're going to get destroyed going down the front straightaway. But as you can see here, I approached this 2 different ways. I drove it in just a little deeper to the Texas sign, drug just a little brake. What you want to do is kind of get your way down to the bottom, and you want to start looking for this strip of asphalt. Now, whenever the run goes on, your entry is always going to be around this Texas Motor Speedway logo, but it's going to back up as the run goes on. Same way with this is, as I'm working to the white line, that's kind of where I start picking up the throttle. This black seam where we was picking up in qualifying, between there and the white line. But as the run goes on, you'll be picking up the throttle a little later till you're almost to this strip of asphalt. And that's where you're going to get in it. That way, now watch, there's 2 differences in these laps that I'm going to show you. This one I was pushing a little harder, and I'm not entirely happy with the exit I had. I really drove straight up off. I was kind of pushing the right front coming off the corner. In my mind, I don't like doing that, so if you can avoid that at all, and I'll show you the next lap, something that I'd done for a little earlier in the run, and my exit was a lot better. But for saving tires in 3 and 4, one thing I've noticed best, and it seems to work for me the most, early on you're really going to have to flat-foot it, especially if you're out front. You're going to have to for a few laps till tires kind of start to fall off, but then you want to start managing. And what I normally do as a reference point is I use this last set of white lines and where this wall jumps out at you. And I kind of lift, and I'll lift somewhere between 60 and 80% throttle. As I get down to the white line, then I get back in it. And that's kind of, again, that's something that'll back up just slightly and maybe not use as much throttle as the run goes on, and drag down to 60 or 80. But as you can see here, here's another lap, and I used this one without brake, and I lifted just the slightest bit sooner. The lap before I lifted at the end of this one I'm lifting here, but lift and then slowly picking up, flat footing it just a little closer to that little strip of asphalt. But I drove off much flatter. I had a much better exit, less wheel input, and I was able to kind of exit with my left side tires where I want them to be. I kind of shoot for the left sides being on this white line. That way I'm really not pushing up toward the wall, and I feel like I'm not eating up that right front. Then going into turn 3, lifting here again, down to about 55-60% till I get to the white line, and then I'm back in it. Just kind of let the truck naturally gravitate off the bottom, just saving that right rear as much as you can. But it's going to get really slick on that exit, and then it's going to get really hard to turn coming out of turn 2. So, of course, my lifting points, you may look at it and say, man, that, if you're trying it in just a test session alone, you say, man, I'm not going fast enough to really back up the corner on entry, that much before the Texas Motor Speedway sign. But when you get in the draft and you start running around other trucks, same way goes into turn number 3, where you're lifting and how much you're rolling out the throttle. When you're in that draft, you're going to be carrying a whole lot more speed, so that's going to change. So just keep that in mind, everything that I showed you about that racing line, and take everything I said there with a grain of salt, and know that when you're in the draft, it's going to affect it even more so, and you're going to be carrying way more speed, so it's going to change just a little. But that's kind of a reference point that I use, rule of thumb here at Texas. So maybe that's something that you guys can go by. In the qualifying lap, 30.408. I feel like that's a pretty competitive lap time to get a pole and top split. I feel like you may see some high 3s this week. I'm not entirely sure how these sessions are going to go. Sometimes I say that, and then it seems like the lobbies are a lot slower. I know last week at Bristol, I only topped my qualifying breakdown twice. I ran a 7.2, and I ran the best I ran in officials was like a 7.46 and then a 7.6. So only done that a couple times. Rest of my poles were over 8s. So could be the same thing this week, but As I always say, it may not be the fastest lap you see, but hopefully it's the most helpful and the most relatable. And as always, I absolutely appreciate all your guys' support and everything you do for me here at Car Inside, all the feedback that I get. If this was helpful, if there's anything that I could do better, just let me know. Leave a comment, give me some feedback. Please keep hitting that like button. That helps me out a lot. That goes a long way. And if you're watching these videos and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. That really helps me out here on the channel. So appreciate the continued support, and we will see you guys next time. As always, thanks for watching Car Inside.